This is your self-realization right now. Our conversation has brought inquiry, and now you can take that inquiry and turn it into curiosity, your curiosity to contemplation, your contemplation, and nurture that hope. Hopium is so beautiful. And from that hopium, you can create that belief system. And when you are there, you can nurture that belief system into a knowing from your own mastered state of awareness, and it's accessible to anyone. And so I always tell people, if you're listening to me right now, you can access this state of knowing instantaneously through the breath. Through the breath in and the breath out is the center point.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Wetsel, and I am so excited to be here with Son Chang. And Son is he's a Taoist master. He is a profound healer. He has over 30 years of experience in guiding and teaching people to become their truest potential. And I am so excited to have you here, Son. We're going to talk about this. This is so funny because your description is the Taoist master, and that's a pretty big, hefty title. But we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about all of your other fabulous gifts that you have, and I'm just going to give you a real quick rundown. We're going to talk about your ability to channel and who you channel. We're going to talk about magic, which I'm so excited to discuss. We're going to talk about manifesting entities, good and bad, and all that involves, and frequency and vibration. So thank you so much for being here today.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend, for inviting me on your podcast. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Well, I'm excited. So before we dive in too deep and really get into the meat of this, can you give everybody just kind of a short history of how you became who you are?
Yeah. I'll give you an abbreviated version. That'll be a tough one. No, it won't be. I'll show you. So, it was first very obvious at the age of 4 that I had this ability to see through my hand into another room. And being nurtured as a child, I was left alone, single parent family. My mother was a radical feminist from the 70s. So I basically was embodied with this yin energy, and furthermore, my imagination. And my fatherly guidance came from pop culture and Hollywood. So I was constantly playing with the imagination part. That merged me into the physicality. I became a fascinated by powerlifting and bodybuilding at the age of 10, focused on that for 10 years. Then I had a voice in my head telling me I needed to go and study this thing called meditation. Never meditated before in my life. I associated with Hare Krishnas and yogis and people that ate alfalfa sprouts, hairy armpits, bad things. It was purely just a societal sort of like norm. So I went into a meditation class, never meditated before, instantly embodied silence. Instantly, I sat in it for 15 minutes. I was so profoundly blown away that was possible, that I thought this whole physical thing of crushing weight and doing all this other stuff was just absolutely nonsensical. So it drew me to wanting to discover what this was, this ability to stop space and time, where it went from noise to silence. And I sat in it with my eyes open for 15 minutes. I then the following day found this thing, and this old thing of my kids, I call it a newspaper, back in the day, back in the good old days, where there was a newspaper. I looked at the classifieds, and wow, there was this person offering channeling classes. I went to the channeling class, a big overgrown buffoon, really. I just looked like this big gorilla walking into this class with a bunch of enlightened people that were wearing organic clothes and eating alfalfa sprouts and inhaling sort of like hemp as their own sort of sustenance. And so I sat down, and this teacher of 60 years was sort of a little apprehensive. What do you want this for? I was compelled to do it. So I sat down in this class, and within a few seconds of him activating and opening the space, Lao Tzu came through me full force at, a million miles an hour, saturated my physical body. I was basically an emanation of this divinity, and everyone was standing around with, basically sticks and marshmallows and heating them up because there was so much of a high transmission, which is generally what happens when you're channeling at that level.
Mhm.
There's this physical, visceral experience. So furthermore, I went from that. He was like, "You SOB, how could you possibly in that? You're some gorilla. You have no value. You're an idiot." Right? He just unraveled. His personality stuff came out.
Oh,
He
wow.
was so like clairvoyance, and so the following day I did his clairvoyance class, right? And I'm thinking nothing of it. It doesn't mean much to me. I'm like, I have no reference. I'm a bodybuilding guy. I've got no reference. So I get involved in the next part. I channel Lao Tzu. He's still dumbfounded. He has disdain for me right now. He's really angry because he'd spent all his time doing this. I just open it up within meditation, channeling, the following day clairvoyance. And so he goes, "Okay, I'm going to show you how it works," because I just read it off a menu, just as he shared it. This is what you need to do. And I didn't have any reference, so I accepted it at face value like a child. That's how I look at it. It's like, hey, if I pick up a weight and I lift it, I get a result. So furthermore, through that, what happened was he goes, "Do a reading on me. Go on, show me. Now I've taught you, show me." And I just sat there and literally this entity came in and said, "You need to explain to him that if he continues ciphering from his students and does not deliver more bodies to this event, we will take his life." And I'm like, whoa. And so I tell him this stuff, and he looks at me and he goes, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." He starts panicking. He goes, "You need to get up. We need to go in the other room right now." He was like blown away. And I'm like, I was more not in the information. I was looking at him like, is this real? Is really happening? And he's like, "How do you, what a, how to," anyway, this further it solidified my knowing, right? So I was dumbfounded, but I'm blown away. The following day, we learned distance healing. I literally experienced the distance healing the same day. Once I was taught it, my friend had a situation where she had sprained her ankle. This is very relevant to the end result. We'll get to it. But the spraining of the ankle gave her this inability to come and see me. So I finished this day of training. I get home. The rotary phone rings. I pick it up, and she's like, "Hey, guess what? You can't. I'm not going to be able to meet you." So within that same moment, I was like, "Oh, I'm bummed out. All right, well, I'll catch you next week." I sprained my ankle, and I said, "Hang on a second. Why don't you stop for a minute?" She goes, "What?" I said, "I've learned this thing today. Can I try it on you?" And she's like, "Really? I don't have time for this. I'm in pain. I want to get off the phone." Ridiculous. And I'm like, "Please let me try it. It's called distance healing." And she's like, "Okay, whatever. Just hurry up." And I said, "I'm going to go through and read all these things in my mind, and then I'm going to perform this thing. They call it a incantation." And she's like, "Okay." And so I went through the whole thing, and then I finalized the incantation, very bland incantation. Heal, 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 heal. And next minute, I kid you not, Lisa, it was like, "What?" And she's screaming through the phone and said, "What kind of sorcery are you committing on me?" And I'm like, "Committing what? Where? I have no idea what you're talking about." She was like, "My ankle shrunk before my very eyes, and I'm standing on it right now."
Wow.
And I'm like, I was like, "You're full of crap." She goes, "Get over here." So I drove over to her house, and she runs to me as I walk through the door, and clearly no signs of a swollen ankle. Now, in your mind, you think, "Oh, it's a couple of weeks. It's going to take a while." She was a fanatic with the Polaroids. She would take photos of everything. And I go, "I don't believe you. Quite frankly, you're just lying to me." And she showed me the photo of the ankle, and I just about died.
Oh.
And her mother's in a chair in the room because she's living at home with her parents, and she's puffing away. And all of a sudden, she draws a cigarette, and I'm just like, I always knew you were a healer." And I'm just like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, easy." And the mother's like, we knew, she could see she was into psychic stuff and healing and all this kind of stuff. And the next minute she said, "I've got a pain in my ankle. I want you to come back and see it." I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I'm full force into this thing. I've got this entity called Lao Tzu that's speaking to me. I can see him. I'm pretty sure I'm corrupted psychologically. I'm probably insane at this point. I have no digestible understanding. All these things are taking place. So I get back to the next day. She has what she considered a swollen ankle. I take her sock off. Now she's completely bloated. Her idea of nutrition is a bottle of vodka and a pack of cigarettes all day, every day. And people placated her because guess what? She has tons of money and people just tell her what she wants to hear. Got a maid here, or this, that, whatever. And so she's sitting up on her armchair, her belly. I don't think she's ever seen her feet, probably in 20, 30 years. And she has her foot on a footstool. And she goes, take a look at it. And I'm like, well, at this point, why not? I mean, it's insane. It just doesn't make sense. So I pull her sock off and I about die, Lisa. I about die because it's gangrenous. It's black. Like it should be cut off. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm freaking out. And she's like, how's it going down there? And I'm like, really? This has got to be a joke. This is something kind of joke. And now I'm having a dialogue with Lao Tzu. And I'm like, we need to take this woman to the hospital. And he's like, no. I'm like, what do you mean, no? You're going to witness the healing right now. I'm like, you've got to be out of your mind. No, you're going to witness the healing. So I sat there for 40 minutes and watched that tissue go back to pink in color from black.
Wow.
And so that was my first entry to actually witnessing healing. And I mean, it's so profound, but it's not, because this is the stuff that I see on a daily basis. And so that entered into pursuing and understanding, how was this possible? What did all this stuff mean to me? And of course, Lao Tzu led me to Taoism. I went over, I trained, I became a Taoist priest in 2 lineages of Taoism. And here we have it today. Here I am, teaching wisdom stuff through my commune with Lao Tzu on a second-by-second basis, and the other 171 teachers that I use, which we refer to as the dialogue to the monologue. My dialogue within the facets of the diamond of perfection is between me and spirit information, which you would refer to as Akashic, direct source information, which returns me to the monologue of the primordial mother. And the evidence will be in the proof in the pudding. You will see it. It will not be something of the mind. You will be able to validate it, and it'll be repeatable within this material. So here we have it, 2024, back at you. But those type of events were necessary to give people a sort of an understanding of how fast someone can recognize and return to themselves. And I always remind people, it doesn't matter who you are, you can listen to my voice and experience the frequency and instantly have an epiphany of returning to who you are.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story. I mean, I can't even imagine at the beginning of all of this happening, experiencing so many events that were so monumental. And what I want to say is in your face. I mean, it wasn't just a subtle, I wonder if that happened or what, it was pretty much just right there.
No.
There was no denying the gifts that you were given.
Well, it ended with what someone would call or coin as the dark night of the soul.
Yeah.
So after that, I had 5 days of every thought, every feeling, and every emotion at a visceral level where I couldn't escape it. I didn't sleep for 5 days. By the third day, contemplation of suicide was definitely on the table. Yeah. I was like, I can't do this. And because of the time, rotary phones, accessing my teacher was not possible. So I'm having a meltdown in every sense of the word, and I would go and distract myself by going to the movies, right?
Yeah.
And something benign as a naked body, a naked woman walking across the screen had a visceral effect on me, and I threw up in front of the person that was in front of me in the theater.
Wow.
And so this visceral effect was just an unraveling. Now, through my own teaching, through my teacher, Lao Tzu, this is possible with 9 times within your humanistic timeline to have these events, that these can take place to reset yourself, to remember who you are. For me, fortunately, that was a one-time banger. That's it. I'm not going back there. But it does present itself, and to be mindful that these types of things can be necessary for your own self-realization.
Yeah. And I have talked to other people that have had these just profound experiences after they've had the experience. Like you said, dark night of the soul is a good way to explain it. and just losing it and not knowing what direction to go or what's happening to you. Yeah, so that's important to be able to recognize that if anybody does have that situation, to be aware that it's not unusual, that it does happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, back in those days, we'd call it a breaking.
Yeah, yeah. And back then, luckily now, the internet and technology, it helps to create resources in a way that, that it wasn't I'm assuming the early 80s for you. Is
Yeah,
about that?
yeah, oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, when that
Well,
happened.
well, yeah. It
I'm
was the
going
80s.
back to when did we have rotary phones? Because I remember. I remember.
Yeah. It's crazy how how much technology has changed. I think the fundamental problem with the interweb is the corruptibility of the human being
Yeah,
and the fact that you can be programmed so easily
yeah,
until otherwise noted.
yeah,
And so much information is just it's a distraction,
yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with that statement and wholeheartedly. And I think that as we go through this conversation, I'm thinking that people might pick up on how that's happening to them. So let's move to magic. And
My
yeah, so let's just start with the very basic, because I think all of us have different definitions of what magic truly is. So what is your definition of magic?
Well, magic is the ability to merge with this current moment and alter the direction of any energetic potential at will. So you have imperium over that. So once you infuse specific alchemical processes, we can get right down to, people speak about magic as sort of like, oh, you can manifest anything or whatever. No, I'm talking about right down to the last dot. So a general manifestation of a resonance of what we define as the primordial mother can be optional and can have variables. We're talking about like, if I had a penny for how many times I've performed magic for requests and some of the most benign things, you have to understand that we are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. The construct of karma is very much how magic works, because you are reflecting on the deficiency of this material, this realm, and you're being able to fill in those spaces and then alter and redirect the energy to create. Now, if you start to deviate from that creation to destruction, which would come in a more ominous form, a lower frequency state, that is still potential and possibility. But with that, you are deconstructing yourself, and furthermore, the echoing effects are far more evident within a karmic model, because you are believing in this sort of lower frequential state that will destroy things instead of create them. Does that make sense?
It does. So yes. So let's dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about what you're saying about kind of shifting or altering things, give us some examples. What are you referring to?
Let me see. Something that would be very benign. Someone comes to me, they're like, oh, you're that guy. I need some help. Furthermore, my grandmother's in a coma. She's about to die. The doctor says she's got 24 hours. I instantly tap into the frequency. The grandmother's like, I'm not ready to die, but I'm in this state because there is very much a deficiency within my relationship with my daughter, my granddaughter. My family are not showing me that I am of any value to them. So I repeat this information back to the child. The child's like, well, I don't want mommy to die. I want her to be here. I then relay that information to the mother. And then the following day, the mother comes out of a coma, her vitals are regulated, and we are back to business as usual. Because this is the state of knowing. This is the information. And when you participate in a unified state, that's the distraction. Because truly understanding your primordial self, your immortal self, requires no participation from the identity, from the personality. You can only obtain that through the now moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get access to direct source information. You cannot identify with your personality, place, person, or thing. You are no place, no person, no thing. Your evidence is first person, third person, no person. And so what that does is it doesn't require an overshadowing of some type of identity, finite mindset. The ego is removed.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has all got to do with frequency. And so you have to master the frequency, which is sort of like my summation of that from a physics model that would make it really simple. It's light to wave to matter to particle realized with your attention, intention, cutting from the cloth of perfection, which is the unified state, the primordial mother. And you are now giving evidence to this through your attention, intention. You are forming what my dear friend, the Buddhist monk, would call dukkha, distortion. And this comes in this currency that we are playing with the electromagnetism. The dualistic effect of this realm is the electromagnetism. And that currency is what we call energy. You have now formed energy. Energy has now got a vibratory frequential state. If you are able to master that frequency, you hold that resonance. And oh, yes, it will be yours. Oh, yes, it will. That oscillating effect you and I are feeling right now is the aha moment. I'll have whatever she's having because we're unifying. We're feeling it. It's visceral. This is the now moment. Evidence has never been more clear. It's an experiential moment. You cannot get it from, as we spoke before briefly, it's not a talking head thing. It's not the amount of information you can recite and remember. You have to be able to experience it. Mm-hmm. So when you hold that resonance within a Taoist path, we identify as all things are a bellows. Reality is seen through the lens of Taoism as a bellows. That means that you are contracting and expanding at the same time. You are all things and nothing at the same time. And that's the paradoxical head screw. The people, Jifu, I'm confused. You must find the vesica, the center point. Everything with energy potential within this realm has a center point. As something that comes in the crystalline immortalized form of human flesh, we find the center point within the heart center. This is the center point of all things constructed that is materialized, as crystallized as human flesh. This is a gift of immortality. So when you form that, you're able to hold it. So we go from Wu Ji, which is the center point between the breath in and the breath out. You find this evidence of what we call absorbing the riches, where you can accumulate this chi, this unified state, and it starts to saturate the physical body. You bring immortality back. You bring in immortality back to reality, and you form that within the physical body, and it presents itself by your imperium of the 50 trillion cells that is your potential of 0.07 millivolts of electricity within every cell. Once you have imperium over that, you can start forming and creating these things. So it's a method to the madness, I like to call it. You must be able to materialize and self-realize this stuff through the experience. This is the cultivational practice. Once that happens, you detach from this state as the identity is no longer serving within that moment of now. And you then reattach as the primordial mother. So your attention intention forms instantly creation. And so once you apply it to a magical, mystical Harry Potter format, which within Taoism, we're very fundamental in our relationship with the universe, and we use star-stepping grids. We use all these relationships to build and fortify said evidence of that crystalline within the material. You use these through the magic of the spoken word that is imbued within the incantation. And then you use this symbol that would be required, which is a talisman within Taoism. And once you imbue this, it becomes realized within this 3D reality. And now you can start forming things however you choose to. And the deficiency to excess, as simplistic as requests for something like as benign as reading someone's energy, bringing someone to a point where they're now able to reinvest in their humanistic experience through the spirit world, or furthermore something like manifesting $1 million, a good time, whatever it is potential only realized by the individual user, but you must be able to hold that resonance or it's just nonsensical. If you cannot create a container to hold that frequency, it will never be realized within this material state. It has to be fortified. So you get to a state of awareness, but if you can't craft and bring that immortality back into this realm through the substance, this is the electromagnetism. That's a currency we're working in, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen and ladies. You form that unification through those energies, and so we dig deep within the physical body and activate the internal alchemy and the architecture. So now the upper dantian, which someone would call a chakra, is the sun, which is all light. Middle dantian is the earth, which is all information. Lower dantian is the moon, the primordial mother, which is the merging of those two energies, yin and yang. And as we refer to it, yin is the absorption of all colors, yang is the emission of all colors. And once you find that center point, it will be revealed to you. And now it's about cultivating and showing that within this material state, because it's all just fleeting moments or transitory states. So now we get into how powerful we can imbue and imprint the linguistics, which will form an incantation through the symbology, which someone would refer to as a sigil within some type of esoteric mystical path. And you merge those, and it becomes living evidence, and it will form whatever you choose it to be. And so, healings, or, if I wanted to say something benign that someone's come to me for, I need you to move a bus stop that's out the front of my business because the local municipality has ruled on it. And if I have a bus stop in front of my business, I'm going to lose money. And so, yes, it's benign, and yes, it's nonsensical, but have I done it before? Absolutely. Because this is how much you can imprint and go deep into this, because the fundamental distraction for most people that walk on this earth is that they believe in their identity, they believe in their belief system, and this is the deficiency, the corruption that makes it possible for, when you imprint and basically activate any of these magical practices, it instantly returns everything to whole. So your ability to direct whatever it is only through the unification of whole, and your activation is high, realizing that everything is abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. And whenever someone tells you otherwise, it's a lie, it's a distraction, but you can only see that through your own lens. So when you cultivate this stuff, it starts with the seed of that. So there's an alchemical process we call the death of a star and the rising of the red phoenix, which is the spirit and keeper of your middle dantian, which accesses this abundant energy from, say, someone like a Nassim Haramein. I don't know whether you've ever heard of this guy, Nassim Haramein. He's a physicist, and he's just discovered all this incredible information about how there's this evidence of what they call black hole energy, which is a unified state that goes beyond the electromagnetism. So once you hit the black hole, the event horizon, you enter into a state or a frequency. Someone might refer to it as a scalar wave. Now, these are all just terms until otherwise noted. You need to see it. Like Lisa and I can show people the evidence of that within this material. It's conceptual until otherwise noted. It must be a visceral, activated state of repeatability. So when you enter that within a Taoist, the rise of the red phoenix, the death of a star, and the rising of the red phoenix reveals black hole energy, which is nothing more than the void, which is the absorption of all colors. People seem to create and form through their personality the simplistic idea that it's all good and bad. Yes, it's polarizing. From a Taoist lens, it's just yin and yang.
Yeah.
And so how you apply that is critical to getting a said result. But it will always form in what we call the diamond. So when you observe the breath in, the breath out is the center point, the Wu Ji. When you hold your breath, you start to absorb the riches. You will feel it viscerally, and it will start forming in a bright white light, which is the yang evidence of yin in this realm. And we call it the condensing and the creation of the diamond, which is perfection. And from that center point, you can create all things. So it's always a visceral thing. It's always repeatable, and it comes from a ritual. And the more and more you dig deeper into that ritual, and you're shown how to enter and create the energy. Then from that, the vibratory effect, then the frequential effect, and then ultimately creating a container so that you can hold that resonance. It's like holding a line. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, I mean, it does to me. So I'm curious about. So let's go back to the bus stop.
Yeah,
So if you're talking about, I want a bus stop moved from in front of my business. There's
right.
a lot of humans that have to make choices and decisions to
Yeah.
relocate that bus stop.
So they
So
think.
how does that work where you're affecting a number of different people to make
Right,
choices and decisions, but
right,
also where in this picture does the person's life plan come in,
right.
and are we altering their plan?
Let me help you understand the layers of that from a more recent event that I had. So, in essence, everyone returns back to whole. The effect of a bus stop being moved is not the material state of that as a very limited, shallow evidence of a bus stop being moved. So, furthermore, if I give you an example, always remember within Taoism, nothing is as it seems. The way to walk is not the way. The way that is named is not the name. Tao is both name and nameless. This is set evidence. This is the realization for anyone on that path. And that's just from a Taoist lens. Is that the absolute? No. It's everyone has their own version of that. But within Taoism, this is how it's offered. So when you're on on something that you would consider a life path or the evidence of diminished return within identity politics, which is the finite mind, which is empty, yet it wants to keep creating more of the same to access the unconscious component and make it conscious 100%. There's a rite of passage that takes place with that, or it's forever just, transitory, talking head elements where you repeat things over and over again. So when I give you an example of this evidence of magic, at face value, I have a personality. My resonance has nothing to do with my personality. I could sit here and in completely embody an emotional state, but that's not where I'm work. That's not where I'm operating on. I'm operating 100% consciously in a frequency that is unified primordial mother. That is the programming unequivocally. That's it. Yet on face value, you go, oh, he's got a personality. He's quite cheeky. He's got this and that, and so the evidence I would give you of what this means when you create and cast magic within this electromagnetism is this. I had an example. I was driving with my family. I've got 6 kids and a wife. People are like, "What? How spiritual can you be? You have 6 kids." They are my teachers. Every time I have a child, they embody that. So I'm driving along, and strangely enough, uh, a cop sees me, and I'm going 10 miles over the speed limit. I pull over. He puts his lights on, instantly reading his anxiety and fear, having a bad day, fought with his wife the day before. He's just like, he just finished his burrito. It's repeating on himself. He's just miserable. He's just a miserable guy right now because that's what life is giving him. So before he even gets to a chance to pull over behind me, flash the lights, he gets out and he's got his hand on his firearm and he walks up and goes, open the windows, because I had tinted windows. So I open the windows and, my personality wasn't having that interaction. So I basically, in the same breath, I already equalized the energy before he even parked the car. But I'll show you the evidence of that in a minute. So before he even completed his sentence where, show me your license and registration, my question to him was, is there any reason why you feel so threatened that you need to draw your firearm on my family? And he was like, give me a license and registration now. Takes the license and registration, goes back to his car, comes back, hands me my license and registration and says, you have such a beautiful family. I'm just having such a great day. What a beautiful car that you have. What an incredible sunny day it is. Like, he literally couldn't stop with the compliments. Please, sir, can I ask you to slow down? This is a warning. Have a nice day. Now, what was taking place is the merging of his
Yep.
deficiency. right? So when you merge this deficiency within this individual, his ability to find that center point is the most important thing. It's not me. My purpose of being stopped by a police officer and telling me I'm going 10 miles over the speed limit was not the event. The event was his ability to now return to his knowing of who he was and finding that wholeness and returning back to his family, having a nice meal with his wife, appreciating the fact that he has two children and that became one. This is what's going on all the time creating. So a benign idea of like a bus stop being moved would be in suggestibility of deficiency. Yes, magic is working in suggestibility of deficiency because that is the karmic model that this realm works in. The polarizing effect is said. So whether that would come in the form of, hang on a second, once I cast it, I don't get into the semantics. Like my dear friend Tom Campbell and I have a very similar consensus. Your the second your attention intention is formed, your probabilities are heightened. So the ratio of say 1,000,000 to 1, the second you put your attention intention, turns back to a variable that is so small that the chances of it happening are greater. And so the more and more you build on your resonance, the more and more your ability to refine and develop the skill, because it is an injection. When I cast magic, everything is a blank slate, and whatever it needs to be formed is heightened in vivid colors. And as the magic is imbued into this realm, it becomes vibratory and frequential before my very eyes. And it imprints deep within the subatomic level. And then it is released into this material.
Mhm.
And so I know when it takes place. My dialogue right now is I'm looking at you, but it's a black drum.
Mhm.
It's a back. There's nothing there but you. That's my attention intention. And anything formed instantaneously, I'm looking at your auric field and this evidence of angels and this incredible bright white light that's burning my eyes, and the gold halo that is around you is the evidence of your own cultivation. And this is the crystalline effect where you turn water into wine. Within alchemy, you turn lead into gold. Gold is a very clear evidence of where this person is and their own ascension and their own level of awareness, because it is formed within their auric field.
Mhm.
And as you develop these skills, you will see it. It will be undeniable, and it will come in these forms. The more deficient, the less light, because the light is the evidence of the dark. The primordial mother is whole. All you are is a manifestation, a crystallized immortal effect of this material. But the ascension level, where your auric field is emanating these angels and all this gold and white light, and it's just, there's even roses and doves. And I mean, it just goes on and on and on. The more I look into, it's just incredibly nourishing and whole. And I am just embodied with that energy. As you can feel it, I can feel it. It's now. And as you define and refine your skills, you'll be able to see this. Can anyone have these abilities? Yes. But it's a method. You must be able to cultivate it. And that's where the alchemy comes in. So, in the semantics of things, this is why I know, and I've been doing it for 30 years, it works. I don't get into the semantics of, well, who made the decision or where, how. Everyone becomes whole within the magic, and then the return is satisfying, and in returning people to this state of awareness of love.
Yeah.
And so there is no deficiency. No one is being left out of this experience or this transmission. It becomes unified. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Well, it does to me. Absolutely. It's almost the way that you're explaining it to me is that what you're doing is balancing the or the energy that is our truest nature. And so when we're making choices and decisions, we may be making them from our mind, from our experiences, from whatever with the police officer, he was having a bad day. So he was making choices and decisions from what that action was. And what my interpretation of what you said was that you were basically breaking down all of that exterior and getting back into this place of wholeness and completeness, that love state, to where choices and decisions are made from the truth of where we are instead of the illusion that's been created from our mind.
And it will show itself.
Yeah.
It's an experience.
Yeah.
So you feel whole. You just feel this unconditional servitude and love.
Yeah.
You cannot fight it. It just is not on the menu. And that is, in my opinion, and part of a Taoist path, is to self-realize that you know when you're ascended to a level that your regular programming is as such, that you are selfless and you're in servitude.
Right.
And the raising of that frequency is the raising of humanity's awareness of the key ingredients of the human condition, empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more and more they merge with that, right? The more and more they merge with that. And this gulf of gorging energy that I'm experiencing right now, that we're communing with, is said evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I love that definition, because, there's so many people look at magic in so many different ways. And I don't think that they really truly understand that, people, a lot of times people use magic thinking that they can manipulate a situation. They want somebody to fall in love with them. So I'm going to create the love potion or the love spell to create this person to fall in love with you. But what you're telling me is that if it's not truly their purest essence to have that relationship with you, it's not going to happen, because it's not in alignment with their energetic pattern. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, because we all are a fractal of this unification, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all merge as one. We're all part of the same cloth of perfection.
Yeah.
So, whenever I've come across something that is low frequency that would be identified as something ominous, the first thing is to merge with love, and it will just disappear.
Yeah.
But it can't be conceptual. It's not hallmark nonsensical rubbish. I'm talking about you experience it. You see perfection and love in everything.
Yeah.
Everyone is the same.
Yeah.
This is the very difference that, a lot of people are like, I am love, I am God, show me, I've taken the shirt off my back. And this, unfortunately, is part of the deficiency, because the fact that you tell the world you're a good person and you're a spiritual person is said evidence that you are not. And part of healing is becoming whole. That's what healing in definition means, is returning to that whole state where you need or want for nothing.
Mm-hmm. You
are just now.
Yeah. Yep. So let's talk about manifesting. So as we're talking about magic, let's talk about manifesting. So, another thing, like what I just said, I have people ask me all the time about relationships and money. Mm-hmm. They either want more money, or they want that ideal, they call them soulmates. Be careful what you ask for when you ask for your soulmate. but that's just beside the point. But what is your definition of what manifestation is?
Well, manifestation, again, it all comes down to the brass tacks, my grandmother would say, is frequency. Yet you have to understand that this will always show itself. Like, oh, that person's so lucky, they have all the money in the world, yet they're emotionally corrupt and bankrupt. They're deficient. And this is what I find a lot of people through my journey that end up on my doorstep. They're like, I'm a healer, I'm a psychic, I'm a light worker, I'm a Reiki master, I'm a Qigong master, I'm a Chinese medicine doctor, I'm a blah, blah, blah. And that's great. You have to start somewhere. Never dismiss that. There is a method to the badness, and there's always a starting point, an origin, where you can recall when I had my epiphany, where I was misaligned to realigned through these events. Yeah. And it's really important to nourish the individual's experience to return to who they are from these timelines. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, it's now wisdom. It may not have the energetic charge of feeling an emotion, but I can reflect on it and use it as a wisdom tool to expand on my consciousness. Mm-hmm. So manifestation is that very creative state. So first we need to fundamentally understand that we are all creators. Now, if you understand that, conceptually it will become realized as a material state, you must be able to see the evidence of that. So creation is quite simple. Well, I manifest. I can't manifest anything. Yeah, I'm just deficient. Well, great observation. Okay, so first and foremost, that deficiency, that misery, is all been created by you. What? Hang on. You are, I'll show you evidence of how magical you are, because you can embody a state of anger and identify that as who you are and ride it till the wheels and hubcaps come off, and you're physically transmuting it into a state where it is materialized as an element. You are magical. You are mystical. You are all powerful. Now you have to understand that that is one side of the coin. You're operating in the polarizing electromagnetism. Now we need to bring you to the other side and merge the two together so it's possible for you to create. But when you create, the evidence will always be in the wholeness that comes with it. It ripples out across this whole realm. So the energy has to be cultivated. So we get back to the alchemical process. We get back to how do you crystallize that? And it must come through the method. And that way you can show evidence of that through manifestation magic healing. But once again, you ask about manifestation, it is a frequency, and it can be created very simply by identifying that your return home is not a far jump. You participating is the very evidence that you need to step out of the way, because you're already that. You are the creator. You are whole. The dukkha, distraction, distortion is the identity, the mind, the ego state. And so you have to be able to create a relationship. And one of the first stakes in the ground for that is being accountable for your behavior. And when you're accountable for your behavior, all of a sudden, the old, back in the 80s when we say, oh, we'll use a diary and we'll count our calories, and someone will be like, I don't eat anything and I'm overweight. I can't get this weight off. It's impossible. Okay, just write down everything you've eaten in a day. Okay, I know what I've eaten. I haven't eaten anything. They come back and the next day they go, holy crap. I ate 3 candy bars. I had 2 Chinese food. This is now you being consciously aware, not this underwriting, corrupt, delusional state where you think that your consciousness has been met. No, your consciousness is very limited. You're limiting it to your intellect instead of realizing you have access to infinite possibility from your unconscious mind. It's now creating and merging the two together, which fundamentally, again, is yin and yang. The center point is the third eye. You get access to all information if you want to take it from a physical level. As you imbue that through the information you are creating. So there's never a moment that you cannot identify that polarizing effect. But the merging of that is how you create manifestation. But you must be accountable. So there must be, again, I keep repeating the method. So the energy potential, this is a currency we work in. People that deny that can be very disappointed in the outcome, because this is the currency. So you must master that currency for it to be realized. The high frequential state of your in your position, the Akashic record, is entering through that communion, that you have that ritual that embodies that and opens up this portal of information that is of the highest frequency. Mm-hmm. And you can bring it in and show evidence to someone that's sitting here going, yeah, I don't really believe. What did you just say to me? How did you know that? And this is the set evidence. And it becomes more and more formed, more and more tangible as you continue to repeat it and cultivate it. You have a knowing. And as for myself, I'm not speaking for Lisa, but you can access this information in a fraction of a second. The more and more mastered you get, the more and more efficient it is, and less intention is necessary, because you're repeating that frequency. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely, it does. I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly. So when we're talking about manifesting, getting back to a very basic question, what can we manifest? Can we manifest material things? Can we manifest something that our ego desires? Or
well, there's no limitation to manifestation. This is the very corrupted fine line that people go on. We are creators.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that I've met thousands of people that are energetically sensitive, but they're corrupted and they're not spiritual at all. They can show me wonderments. Oh, wow, I can do this. I can witness a healing. I can do. That doesn't mean that you're ascended and evolved. And this is the fundamental issue that energy presents, because you're still in the electromagnetism. Unification requires zero participation.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come to that point of ascension, you will always be in servitude. You'll always be selfless. And that will never be even on the table.
Mm-hmm.
But manifestation, the most caveat that I would identify with manifestation is, first and foremost, the desire for manifestation comes from, I want what I don't have, which is quite evident that you're deficient in something. And every time you acquire something from this material world, it has a charge to it, but then it's like a child with a new toy. Next. And you're still wanting more because you are not whole. So you're looking outside of yourself to bring yourself back into the truth. Because once you are whole, there is nothing you desire or want for other than the selflessness. This is just the evidence of your action or inaction through that path.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else, but you and I are on the same page.
And so it's exciting to get. So within Taoism, we have this thing called inquiry, contemplation, curiosity that forms hope. Hopium is such a great thing. Hopium is the blossoming seed to a belief system. But the belief system, there's a fine line between belief system and knowing. So you can believe that if you walk under a ladder, you're going to have bad luck. Or you could, and guess what? It's going to be materialized. You're a creator by default. Or, of course, you could believe that if you walk under a ladder, you have good luck. And this still is presented as the personality, the identity, the electromagnetism of this realm. And when people speak in this kind of linguistics, you understand where they are on their own ascension level. So when you manifest things and you want this and you want that, when you acquire it, there's no need to continue to seek the same thing. You'll know that you're having a scratch in your record that keeps repeating it. If you cannot continue to expand, this is a moment of contemplation and then reflecting on yourself. That's like, hang on, I still want more of that, because you're unable to access that higher frequency. Because once you're whole, you don't get distracted by these things. They're very exciting, and everyone should go through them. And there's nothing wrong with them. It's when you get distracted on your path to the Wizard of Oz that you get off with the Tin Man and the lion, that you cannot find that spot where you are complete, because you keep ascending. The expansion doesn't stop. Mm-hmm. And if you find that you're obsessed with one thing, whether it's healing, whether it's manifestation or magic in of itself, take a moment and reflect on what it is that's holding you there, because you still haven't completed you haven't regained that energy. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just being able to see that for yourself. And that's that accountability perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's really important what you're saying, because there's so much to all of this work that we do that has to do with what our mind has created as a belief system, and what we want and what we desire because of those belief systems. And when we're talking about standing in the truth of this frequency and vibration that we keep talking about, it is separate from what our belief systems are creating as our reality. And I think that that's something that I really want people to understand, and why it's so hard to clean those belief systems up, work on letting those go, so that we can stand in our truest, purest frequency, so that we can create the magic and stand in this true and pureness of who we are, and manifest exactly what is meant for us to be, because we're standing in our truest essence. Okay, so there's my little preaching for
It's
the
always
moment.
a reclaiming of your energy,
Yeah,
which is ultimately a fractal of Tao, God, Buddha.
yeah,
And when you become whole, you are just a beacon of selflessness and servitude. And from a Taoist path, we look at it as we are ambassadors to planet Earth. And the purpose of the Taoist rites is to walk that path, to reclaim that, to remember who you are, return to who you are, and then furthermore contribute to humanity's ability to connect with empathy, which raises a frequency, and we all embody that love.
yeah,
That it's not conceptual; it's the absolute truth.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's jump to entities.
Mm, mm, yeah.
So what do you call, or how would you describe an entity?
Okay. Well, there are infinite amount of spirits and energies
Yes.
and entities in this space, in all spaces,
Yeah.
and it depends. It's like I find it really interesting to in this day and age. There's this fascination with sleep paralysis, which I find problematic, but for some reason it's really popular right now. You don't need to shut your physical body down to obtain access to every, as we would call it, every dimension. But these entities are formed by the deficiency of the individual experiencer. So it's like the old expression, hey, they're all out there. They're in it, just as we are infinite, and we return to our knowing that we are abundant, timeless, endless, limitless, infinite. As you're on this journey, your personality creates this beacon through your belief system that will attract these energies. And the energies and entities and spirits can come in all different forms. So understanding that they're yin and yang, they start to form more in a perception of your version of what that is. And it will create itself in this form to satisfy whatever you have constructed in your personality as your reality. And so, you want to be the big badass exorcist, or you want to deal with low frequency energies. Their frequency, they only form into an identity through your own lens of perception, and they're substantive. There's absolutely, they are dense, they are palpable, but they're only created by you. And referring to my dear friend Tom Campbell, we refer to the large consciousness system, which is really his version of what he believes everything is a virtual reality. So we have our name, we are the main player, and everything else is an NPC. So it depends on where you are in your own evolution, that everything will present itself as what you need where you are right now. Now, if you're very stuck in your belief system and you entertain and obsess over, a boogeyman or some type of like identity that would seem ominous, this will show itself in this frequency, and you will then have to contend with that, and it will form and commandeer your attention intention, which leads us to a lot of other indigenous practices where, wutiki, jinn, mind parasites. These are all things that are formed within your own experience. This is why there's a fine line between belief and knowing. And if you're at a certain frequential state, you're going to stay in that state of corruption, deep destruction, which is what you would call a lower frequential state. And this is only shown through you, the experiencer. So, I could literally have a fire sale of not seeing these type of entities for years. Yet, quite commonly, in the last 10 years, I've been seeing more and more evidence of aliens within people's auric fields. It's mind blowing to me. Is that my thing? No. But I see it every day. Every day I see it because more and more people are identifying with this belief system. Now, whether that transmutes into ascended state of knowing will only be through the evidence of what they're able to create or crystallize within this material. So if it's really of a high state of ascension as that person claims it to be, I'm a Pepsi challenge guy from the 80s. I'll take the taste test with anyone. Show me that your God, your spirit, your entity is giving you high ascended information, it will always present itself the same way. And I think there's a lot of corrupted fear mongering that goes on, where people are getting information that's being distorted by their personality, and it's so deep within a fear based messaging that that's not how the universe that I've seen will present itself in a high level of ascension, pure source. It will always be to the benefit of the individual and the collective, raising it so that everyone returns to that unified state of whole.
Mm-hmm.
And will never come corrupted with the idea that it's this, that, or something else. It will always be unified. And so there are different levels, absolutely. The entities exist. I've dealt with them for 30 years, everything from feng shui, house clearing, exorcisms. Let's get right down to it. That was part of my training as a priest. Now, these days, an exorcism can take place in 5 seconds. Someone wakes up, they believe they're channeling the Palladians up a YouTube channel against 100,000 followers. That doesn't have to be a negative thing. This is the very corruption of, I think, psychology and what that means to separate the individual. And that all sort of happened around the same timeline, around 1600, where science threw out the metaphysical aspect of their equation of what they sum as of the scientific model of exhibiting information and realizing it just to cause of effect. They stayed within the Newton model, and they refused to add the spiritual aspect, which was part of their very formula up until that point. And then they injected psychology, which makes you separate, thinking that your mind is separate from your body, that it's all in your mind and you're deluded, which is part of this repeating.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So is there such a thing as an entity? So let's say, gosh, I don't even know how to describe it, but it's like an energetic body that can enter my body and cause different personality changes, or something that could happen to me in a physical way. Is that
Well, yeah.
a
If
thing?
you know, well, if you know what you know, you don't know what you don't know. It's all, you're a creator.
Mm-hmm.
So you enter the doorway to that. If your creation, your perception of your reality comes in the form of, I believe in heaven and hell, good and evil, and I believe in ominous identities such as Satan, devil, demons, these types of things, then they will present themselves in your own experience. So can that enter? Well, it's being constructed. As a creator, you are constructing your relationship with these things. Now, what does it mean? It doesn't mean, it can mean nothing or something. But if you're exhibiting emotional states, you are suggestible. That's as simple as that. So that's the gateway to anything. Ultimately, you want to ascend to that emotional state of 100% everything is perfection and love. And with that, the universe will give you more of the same. It doesn't have a moral compass. All these constructs and these variable layers of experience are from the creator, from the user of this experience. So are they real? Absolutely. If someone comes to me and they exhibit these sort of traits, and you go through further inquiry that this is part of their belief system and what they believe in, they are bringing more of the same, because that's what's the mirroring effect of the universe. And so, can they commandeer the individual's attention, intention? If that's part of their belief system and equation, 100%. So, fear and fearlessness is a fine line. But to do that, you will feel detached from all things. Nothing moves my needle. I am that frequency and I hold that resonance. I fear nothing. I am nothing. I am all things. Mm-hmm. But you can't, it's something that is conceptual. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Well, that teacher that I spoke to you about earlier, that I basically read his energy, and that energy said, 6 months later, I was holding him in my arms and he died from brain cancer. Now, that was his belief system. He entered into a contract. You see, these again are formats which are really important. There are certain levels of ascension where people believe in soul contracts. They believe in contracts in of itself, their ascended level. There is nothing wrong with that. That's a path of construction of how you are perceiving your merging of this unified state. When I enter or pass this realm, there is nothing but phosphorus white light or complete darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I merge into those two energies, there is a center point, what we call the Wu Ji, where the possibilities of creation are endless. And so many people talk about, I had a near-death experience. I was given my soul contract, my soul review. This is very powerful stuff for their journey. Is that the absolute realization of what takes place outside of this physical realm? I would have a very healthy conversation with someone that would hold that as an absolute, because it is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
well, yeah. And if we listen to all the different near-death experiences, you recognize that they're all very different, and you can tell that if you really start listening to the experiences people have, that it's very much in alignment with to their belief system and who they are. You can document that. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. I mean, near death, OBEs, having what people would call astral projection. We just call it Shen projection,
Mm-hmm.
which you project the spirit and you're able to operate in advance of any event within this material. This is the evidence of immortality.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all just ancient practices. They're thousands of years old. They've been handed down from generation to generation within Taoism. Now, is that the absolute? No, I was just guided through my incarnation, my re-up of this experience right now. I made sense of my journey, all the things that took place from me when I first entered into an awakened state of 100% consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
That this made sense to me. Is this the absolute? Absolutely not. It's an absolute for whoever gravitates to this experience and it resonates within them as their truth.
Yeah.
That is how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So, someone can follow you and your wisdom teaching, someone can follow me and my wisdom teaching, and they never meet because they have a different resonance.
Right.
It's what is accumulating. And I think that's really important because so many people have absolute truths, and this is concerning for me. The one is the absolute truth, and second and foremost is that they don't believe that they have any darkness within them, because that's fundamentally the seed or core of creation is the primordial mother.
Mm-hmm.
So we go deep into shadow work. I'm not a big soul retrieval guy. Trauma and triggers are energy. And so when you show someone that, they're like, holy crap, I empowered myself in 3 seconds. I've been angry for 5 years. And and literally a week later, they'll be like, I cannot find that anger. You just reclaimed who you really were.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when you were talking about an exorcism,
mm-hmm.
because you've done that. So when you're dealing with somebody that feels like they do have some kind of an entity or something that's attached to them, how do you exercise that?
Well, yeah, there's an absolute system. First, I go into negotiation. Right. It's funnily enough, I haven't done this for years because it doesn't come up on the menu. Aliens are coming up. Yeah. This is not. But strangely enough, I met with this one psychiatrist, and he's handing me a bunch of his clients that are just sick of the model of psychology. They know that they're being commandeered. He, through 40 years experience, knows that the voices in their head are just their inability to merge back into a different state and pause and dampen that information. Mm-hmm. So strangely enough, I'm about to do a couple in the next week or so. But furthermore, what happens is first you start with a communication, and it's very easy to evoke that. It takes very little time. The subject will be in more an autonomous position of complete unraveling. So they relax their mind, they relax their physical flesh, which brings presence and evokes this energy, and it loves to present itself. So that's the first thing. And when you look at their auric field, their chakras, or their dantians, we call them, will be completely intertwined and locked with almost dark, ominous like energy, wrapping and controlling the potential of these energy centers. and making it a very dull, sort of gray looking color instead of the vibratory colors it should have. They should have a band of white light emanating out of their physical body and presenting the evidence of this crystalline form in gold, platinum, silver. So that's the first thing you notice. Of course, their own confession of them being tired of being commandeered by the voices in their head and hearing this conversation. And you dampen that. Normally within this state of material, they use medications for that.
Yeah.
So when someone's gone past that, they don't want to do it. Now it's about revealing it. So the second the body is autonomous and is laying, and I add a few little incantations, the energy will present itself like we're having a conversation right now. And then it will show what it is that its purpose is for this individual. And I've never met an energy that I haven't been able to exercise inside of a few seconds, other than one back in the day, man. I mean, that was 3 hours. That was painful. Oh my goodness. It was like sitting across the table from someone negotiating a business deal. They don't normally, what happens is the second you give them evidence of the frequency, they literally blossom into a what in my vision, when I see it, they blossom into this beautiful rose, and it starts to expand, and the love expands, and all of a sudden it just wants to embody and hug this frequency. And they're like, okay, you got me. It's time for me to exit. They have learned their lesson, whatever that may be, and it will come from the corruption. And I've never had an incident where the voices have returned. Now, some of them want to actually involve themselves with a much deeper understanding and become mastered at that state, and then move in and out of it once they've acquired this awareness that their psychological state is so much more than that. It's not just a head thing. It is embodying them physically, and it's telling them to do things that they consciously wouldn't want to do. But it seems like it's their idea.
Yeah.
Remember, all thoughts of your mind are not yours.
Yeah.
People tend to go, what are you talking about? Well, you need to first create a very, very healthy relationship with your frequency to know what information you're accessing is truly of the highest ascension and not something that would present itself as something else. And so there are specific rituals that we go through, and the body will evoke this unraveling. It'll look like something out of a Hollywood movie. And in most cases, they will just spin off and literally come off a table. And that's why I like to have them on the floor. So they just move around and just completely let go, as you would put it. Elsa would say, let it go, let it go. And the transmutation of that is really quite profound, because all physical ailments they have, anything that they can imagine is gone. Yeah. Whether it's eczema, whether it's migraines, whether it's tumors, it doesn't matter. It all disappears because this thing has been siphoning from their life force and their attention intention. Yeah. It's literally commandeered that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. It sure does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for all of this information. I didn't even get to ask all my questions because we're running out of time. But gosh, you're you're so fun. You got so much to offer. But before we wrap this up, do you have any final parting words that you'd like to share with everybody now?
Yeah, I mean, this is your beginning, your excitement as a seeker, as I would call it. I would coin it the Taoist seeker moment. This is your self-realization right now. Our conversation has brought inquiry, and now you can take that inquiry and turn it into curiosity, your curiosity to contemplation, your contemplation, and nurture that hope. Hopium is so beautiful. Yeah. And from that hopium, you can create that belief system. And when you are there, you can nurture that belief system into a knowing from your own mastered state of awareness, and it's accessible to anyone. And so I always tell people, if you're listening to me right now, you can access this state of knowing instantaneously through the breath. Through the breath in and the breath out is the center point. You hold that. I suggest this as a contemplation to the audience. Take a 9-second inhale, hold for 9, exhale for 9, and you will materialize something that was beyond your wildest imagination. And furthermore, you will be able to describe it. And furthermore, take it under this podcast and describe it to the rest of the audience what it is that you experience. But you are gathering and regaining and reclaiming the true nature of who you are, and it will present itself in the physical body.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what services do you offer?
Well, here we go. As my beautiful sister Julie would say, a buffet of psychicness. Put it this way: there's really nothing. I mean, under the title of Taoist priest, I teach people clairvoyance, mediumship, channeling, anything of the sensory perception nature. And so, most commonly people want to really embody alchemy, and they want to get a mastery over this state so that they can actually, the biggest deficiency is people get a taste and they're incapable of being able to share it with others. They think they are. But if you cannot be whole, then I would suggest you pause, cultivate yourself, become whole, and then teach others. But if you're deficient, then you go forward. Hey, look, I want to teach people more deficiency. I think it's a wholeness. This could be problematic. I would suggest that you go back to the drawing board and reflect a little bit and be accountable. And so, I'll teach people any of the above. I love to get into transmissions, healings, manifestation, all that kind of stuff. It's all part of the big picture. It's the excitement. I sort of merge it as this. My teaching is like Big Trouble in Little China meets Last Airbender, and they had a baby. And this is how I bring you on this magical mystery ride of deep knowing. And it's exciting. I mean, at some point we'll go over a conversation when you're on my podcast. But, I have had hundreds of events where I've gone through the deep bowels of Chinatown in San Francisco and discovered some incredible mystical stuff that will blow people's minds.
I bet.
So that's another story, and I look forward to sharing it at some point.
Good. So, how do people get a hold of you?
You can get me on the social sphere, interweb, realization of Instagram, YouTube. YouTube, I have a podcast, Consciousness of the Way. Instagram is just the Way 126. Reference to the Way 126. What is the Way 126? Well, it happens to be my digital offering of a ancient Taoist practice that has you self-realized. So it's all imbued and imprinted. You have a 2-year magical mystery ride. All you do is hit play, and you'll suddenly feel like you've had 10 pina coladas, a full body massage, and 5 days in the Bahamas. That's part of it. It's a visceral thing, and this is part of knowing thyself, regaining and reclaiming the energy, and it regulates your energy centers. So, sometimes I'll always remind people, look, do the first 9 weeks of this app, and if nothing more than master your emotional state, which is where 99% of people are. They don't want to be suffering. They want to be able to reclaim that energy. So they'll do that in like 9 weeks, and that's forever a gift that is imprinted and imbued within them that never leaves them. Because you and I understand that when you first started on this journey, it might have been a process for you to get to this state of now. Yeah. You're there all the time. And this is what the mastery shows you the evidence of, that it's not like a diminished return of physicality when you access this crystalline state. It's the now moment. You master it, and so you access that frequency instantaneously because you are the frequency. Mm-hmm. And so, in any case, if people want to experience the Way 126, have at it. I take judges, accountants, whoever it is. They go, holy crap! I have no idea I have this power within me to change the state that I'm in. Because people get trapped in the mind prison. They get deficient, and then they believe that they don't have this imperium over their state, which is absolutely a lie. Yeah, so people can find me that way.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And what a gift and what a treasure and an honor to have you here. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I'm positive that everybody learned something in this deep conversation. So thank you again. And for our listeners, thank you guys for listening, and I hope we'll see you next time.
Thank you, guys.